Hi, I'm Kathy Smith, the director of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society here at Community College of Philadelphia. Today's perspective interview is conducted by David Travaskis, who's an adjunct faculty member here at Community College and is the pro bono counsel for the Pennsylvania Bar Association. He's also a member of the Center's advisory board. In today's interview, David speaks to Robert Reed. Mr. Reed is a longtime U.S. attorney who serves as executive assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. He handles community education and reentry programs for the office and is a champion of the youth court movement in Philadelphia, as well as numerous other alternate justice programs.
Welcome to the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society's Perspective Series on CCP TV, the educational channel of the Community College of Philadelphia. I'm David Travaskis, an adjunct professor here in the Paralegal Studies program at the college. I'm delighted today to have as my guest our distinguished guest, Robert Reed, Executive Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
And you've been a U.S. attorney for a long time. How many years is it now?
It's over 30, amazingly.
Wow, 30 years. And I think everybody who's watching this show, their image of the U.S. attorney is what they see on television. You go after the bad guys, you prosecute cases, you always win cases. And has that been part of what your career has been all about?
Well, of course, the image of a U.S. attorney is young, just like I look right now. But yes, I think that historically that has been the image. We do win most of our cases. And we're blessed in a way because we work with such great agents. We work with FBI, DEA, ATF, Secret Service, Homeland Security. We work with all of the federal agencies and many great state and local law enforcement agents. So we're able to put our cases together thoroughly and very effectively, and we generally are successful in our prosecutions.
And I know that when you win a case at the federal level, the sentences that people get are long.
Well, particularly in the violent crime and narcotics area, yes, they are very long, and intentionally so, because in the federal system, normally you just don't get there on your first offense. Normally you've done something in your background, you've chosen, or your lifestyle has taken you into the world of crime. So you've been through the local system, you've probably been through the state system, and now you find yourself in the federal system with a fairly substantial criminal history. And as a result of that, we are there to really take on those people who have been, we'll call them the worst of the worst.
But what's interesting is that what your work is today, almost all your work today, is actually trying to keep people out of the system.
That's right. That's almost 100% of what I'm doing, maybe 98% of what I'm doing, which has been a huge, huge change.
And we're going to talk today about a lot of things, but I'd like to start first with the work you're doing at Strawberry Mansion, which is a local high school. I remember not that long ago, Diane Sawyer was in town touting it as the most dangerous school in America. Why is the U.S. Attorney's Office over at Strawberry Mansion?
Well, what happened was about 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago, I was asked by the mayor's office called Philly Rising, which is this wonderful organization that really goes into communities and helps try to really resuscitate kind of community organization spirit. And they had seen our work in various schools around the city, including Martin Luther King and Germantown and Kensington Health Science Academy. And they had asked me and our office to go to Strawberry Mansion because at that time, 2 years ago, the school district had announced that they were closing two other high schools, Fitzsimons and Rhodes, and they were going to consolidate those two schools with Strawberry Mansion. Because of concerns that these were not just sports rivals, but actual historical rivals in a more of a violent sense, a community sense, they felt that our presence there could help deal with some of the violence that they anticipated might start in the fall of 2012. So that's how we got there, and in the summer of 2012 I met with Linda Clayett-Wayman. She is now the principal, has been again for that since 2012, and we developed this fantastic, unbelievable relationship. She's a powerful, passionate woman who has done a remarkable job at turning the school around, but we joined with her and other organizations to try to assist her in reducing violence and bullying and to provide additional resources to the school. So we developed this program over time. It was a 10-week program working with various organizations such as Teen Truth Live and the Philadelphia Eagles, believe it or not, and the Philadelphia Police Department. We devised an anti-bullying, anti-violence program that spanned 10 weeks in the schools. And also we had another part of that, which was to provide a certain number of children or students within the schools to create a film about their experiences with violence. And just recently we've released our third such film. It's called Morning at Night, and Strawberry Mansion students were involved in that. So the bottom line is we developed a series of programs, those being the first, to bring to the schools with the idea of getting a conversation going about violence and how to stop it and the impact of violence on students.
Now, I love this idea of having a conversation with the kids, but you're walking into a school with kids, many of whom have had brushes with law enforcement.
Right.
You don't look like the kids at Strawberry Mansion. This idea of being a federal prosecutor, I'm not sure how many of the kids understood the difference between the federal system and the state system, but I think they do understand a prosecutor is usually on the other side. So what would happen? How would these conversations get started?
Well, I think that one of the first programs we did bring in addition to what we spoke about, actually the very first program we really started was a youth court. And we're working very closely with Greg Volz, who I call the guru of youth courts. We started our first youth court in Strawberry Mansion in November of 2012. And we had a group of students who, I don't know how typical they were, but it was a challenging group. And this is, to answer your question, this is what happened in one of the very first classes. A young man said to me, as I entered the classroom, as a matter of fact, Greg had said, "Rob, you should handle this question." And he says, "I think that all prosecutors and judges should burn in hell."
It doesn't sound like a question.
It wasn't a question. And so I saw that as an opportunity, actually. I did not, my blood didn't get going. I wasn't angry. I said, well, let's talk about that. And because I wanted to know why they thought that. Because as you said, their view of prosecutors and judges was they were only interested in putting young people in jail based in part in their race, their poverty, their class, and having nothing to do with who they were. And I tried to give them a different perspective. So I talked about what my understanding was of justice. And I said, look, I went into the law to serve people. And I talked about being in the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice. To me, it was the greatest honor I could ever think of having to work for a department that its entire mission is to do justice. And I explained to them that justice to me meant fairness. And that, so I have prosecuted, yes, people who have committed violent crimes and people who have committed violations of our civil rights laws. So have I prosecuted police officers for violating those laws? Yes, I have. I prosecuted prison guards for unfairly beating and committing what I would call cruel and unusual punishment against inmates. But if someone is part of a large drug organization that's violent, I don't have a problem in prosecuting them either. Or a white-collar defendant who is taking money that is undeserved because they did it by fraud. So I think that was the first conversation we had so that they could understand, because I was the first person they've probably ever talked to from the justice system who could give them a full explanation of what justice really is and what service really means.
And how was that responded? I mean, did the kid who asked the question follow up with you on that?
Well, it's funny. This was part of this youth court, which we haven't talked about, but the youth court process is a fascinating process where you're teaching young people about the rule of law and how to be a judge and a jury and what courtroom procedure is. So I think that as we continued to show up, that is Greg Volz, myself, we had 3 wonderful Temple Law students. We continued coming back 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week for many weeks. They realized that we were serious about working with them, with helping them, with guiding them, with teaching them. And so I did go back to that student a couple of months later and I said to him, do you remember you said you thought that all prosecutors and judges should burn in hell? And I remember he kind of had the sheepish look and he said, did I say that? And so it was like he took it back because I think he realized that we were treating him like a person and now in turn he was treating me like a person. There was mutual respect. And as we talk about what we've done in Strawberry Mansion and other schools, I think the bottom line is, from what I've seen, and one of the lessons learned is that while there are some people in our society who would like to throw away kids who are from the inner city and poor and of a different color, the reality is that when we listen to these young people and we give them opportunities and we treat them with empathy and respect, they can do just as much as anyone else.
That's an amazing message. I know that the U.S. Attorney's Office was very concerned when there was a push in the 2013-14 school year that Strawberry Mansion might be closed down after all this work. Strawberry Mansion stayed open and your programs have continued there. What is happening right now at Strawberry Mansion in terms of what the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing there?
Well, I should go back and tell you that we felt very strongly that Strawberry Mansion should not close. And actually, I met with Dr. Hite along with Zane David Meminger, our U.S. Attorney, and we spoke with him about, in our view, the necessity of keeping it open. We believe Dr. Hite really did make the intelligent and appropriate decision to keep the school open. And our fundamental reason for speaking so strongly about this, which is, again, outside the box for a U.S. attorney to take any position on a particular school, but it just seemed, talking about fairness, that if you're taking students from 2 schools and consolidating them with the third, Strawberry Mansion, that means the students from those 2 schools will have gone to 1 school in year 1, at Strawberry Mansion in year 2, and if you close Strawberry Mansion, another school in year 3. And that just seemed fundamentally unfair. So as a result of the school staying open, we have been able to not only maintain the programs we started, but to really enhance them. Early on with Ms. Wayman, I asked her, what are your wishes? What can we do? What resources can we bring to this school that you believe would make a difference? And I said, I can't promise you we can do it, but we can certainly try. Because we saw ourselves as facilitators, coordinators more than anything, kind of behind the scenes supporters of all the great work that Ms. Wayman and her staff were doing in the school. So one of the things she said was, we'd like a football team. Our school has never had a football team. And I was astonished to think that an inner city school would not have a football team. So working with Philly Rising and the school district, we were able to get them their first football team ever. And that we were going to actually announce it in December of 2012 when the school district announced the closing of Strawberry Mansion. So we couldn't announce it that day. When we learned that the school was going to be kept open, working again with our partners, we came up with an idea to have a celebration for the community. It was a thank you day for the Strawberry Mansion community on behalf of their support of the school. And so on April 27, 2013, we had a big party, really, for the community. Right in front, the police department was supportive. They closed the roads right around Strawberry Mansion. We had moon bounce for the kids, and we had hot dogs and hamburgers. And we announced that day, as a matter of fact, I got to announce that there was going to be a football team. And they were going to start practices in August. It was very exciting. We also started something called a community garden. So right across the street from Strawberry Mansion, that day, the managing director of the city of Philadelphia came out, and people from my office came out. And we had Pennsylvania Horticultural Association, and then we had the East Park Revitalization Alliance coordinated the creation of this wonderful garden. And since April 27, 2012, and now we've built 45 beds. And I will tell you, my back will has participated in that. But we've gotten 30, 40 people from my office to help build those beds. 25 are for the community. And the community, in a wonderful way, has taken ownership of these beds. They have their names on them. And they're growing produce for the first time in their lives. In September, we built 15 more beds, or maybe 20, for the school, because the school started a culinary arts program in September for the students. So the students are now going to be able to grow their own food, to take that food and use it in making food and learning how to make food, and then serving it to people within the school and hopefully the community. We're hoping to get a greenhouse built in sometime this year at the garden. And we've had a tool shed. So these were just two things that were not only for the school, but they were now for the community as well.
You think about it, a football team, a garden, those aren't what we usually think of with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
No.
Now, I don't want to ignore what you're doing at Strawberry Mansion, but there's lots of other programs that I think our audience would be surprised to hear about that the U.S. Attorney's Office is involved with. And I know you did an interesting initiative with young people in Arthur Ashe. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. We felt we wanted to be creative, to think outside the box, and see what we could do by bringing people together. So in 2010, I and a colleague of mine and I went over to Arthur Ashe and met with Ken Holtzman, who's the head of Arthur Ashe. It's now, I believe, called Legacy. And we spoke about creating a program for youth in the juvenile justice system. Again, we had no knowledge whether or not this could work, but we threw out an idea. How about providing opportunities for youth to come to a place like Arthur Ashe or Legacy and learn how to play tennis and be mentored? And he said, gee, it's funny that you mention that because we have this group or organization called the Philadelphia Youth Sports Collaborative, PYSC. And that's what they are doing. They have all these programs, and they would love to serve youth like this. So we brought them together over bagels and fruit and coffee, and we did a presentation. And from 2010 to now, this program has been ongoing. So we're now in the third year. We've had over 100 young people involved in this program from the juvenile justice system. Judge Kevin Doherty, of the administrative judge for family court, has completely been supportive and great. We've had juvenile probation supporting this, and it's been a huge effort. I mean, I can't tell you all the moving parts in this, but we're giving young people the opportunity to do sport as part of their community service, to give them a new idea of what the world is like. You know, one of the sports that they're doing, and I never knew this was a sport, was competitive bass fishing.
Competitive bass fishing.
I never heard of it, but some kids have gone to squash smarts, and rowing and wrestling and various other things. So, it's been an eye-opening opportunity to give these kids these special opportunities. And I should tell you that in the fall, I believe it was in September, this program, it's now called Sports for Juvenile Justice, received an international award for the best new program. And it was at the Pennsylvania Convention Center they received the award. So it was very exciting that this germ of an idea, which came out of our brains, is now helping some young people.
Well, it's interesting to see how the U.S. Attorney's Office with schools like Strawberry Mansion is trying to help kids before they get into the system. This Arthur Ashe program, they're helping them after they are in the system. But you also have some programs for adults, some re-entry programs for the adults who are in the system. And I know that that's a very, very dear part of your work. So can you talk about that for a moment?
Attorney General Eric Holder has talked about the three-legged stool, which is the leg that most people think of the U.S. Attorney's Office about, or think about when they think of the U.S. Attorney's Office, is the idea of law enforcement, and that we're going to vigorously investigate and prosecute violations of federal law, and working with our federal, state, and local partners, and that's what we do. That's one leg. The second leg is violence prevention, and that's a part of what we're doing, and we've spoken a little bit about that. And the third part is prisoner reentry. And now I've got involved with prisoner reentry going back to 2006 during the Bush administration, and we had gotten a grant from the Department of Justice to work on essentially this same idea of three-part strategy in the 222 corridor, which goes from Easton, Northampton County, all the way to Harrisburg. And in 5 of those cities, Easton, Bethlehem, Allentown, Reading, and Lancaster, we set up reentry programs. And it was the first time we had ever done this, and it was a fascinating initiation into reentry. In 2007, our office got involved with federal judge Timothy Rice, who is a magistrate judge, and we came up with the idea of having a reentry court. And so working with the federal defendants, federal defenders, federal probation, Judge Rice, and our office, we devised a program to assist people coming back from federal prison to readjust and make a better adjustment back to society. And then so in 2000, and several years later, there was a second federal reentry court with Judge Restrepo, which we now have. And really, these have been models nationally. As a matter of fact, Attorney General Holder came here in November and met with graduates of the reentry court over in the courthouse, and it was really a fabulous day, because I think he was quite moved at the impact that this program had on these people coming back from prison, and the changes that you could actually see in their attitudes and outlooks, and how they appreciated the fact that people were really willing to come together. I didn't appreciate how difficult prison was, and certainly I didn't appreciate how difficult it was coming back. So I met a young man named El Sawyer, and El is a fabulous, fabulous person. We've become great friends. I met him in 2010 when he was working on that Voices of Youth program. He was going to be the director of one of the films that we created. And in the process, or in the course of our relationship, he started opening up to me about his own experiences, about his life both in prison and coming out, and how he wanted, actually it was a dream of his, to create a movie or a film to help people make their transition, to understand the challenges and obstacles that people were facing when they were returning from prison. So we were able, as a result of that conversation, many conversations, we were able to provide funding to Mr. Sawyer and John Kaufman, his partner, and they created a film called Pull of Gravity. And it is about these very challenges. It focuses on 3 men making that transition back from prison. It's an incredible film. It's great that our office has funded it, and that we were supportive of it. We supported it. We've shown it not only in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center twice, but we've shown it all over the city. The mayor's actually had a showing of it at City Hall. But we've gone to Alabama and Florida and Minnesota, and we're going to Boston, and we've been in Delaware, we've been in Virginia, North Carolina. All of these states are interested in learning the very experiences that we are learning as well about these challenges, so we can develop better programs to assist these people coming out.
Well, that is just amazing, the range that the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing. If somebody watching this today wanted to connect, to maybe get a local showing of the film, to connect with you about, could you do something for their community, is there a way that they can reach out to you?
My email is robert.reed, R-E-E-D, that's how I spell my last name, the number 2 at usdoj.gov. So it's robert.reed2@usdoj.gov. And that probably is the easiest way, and we can make it happen.
No, that's phenomenal. I want to take the last few minutes we have together just to ask you, you said earlier about one of the lessons you've learned when you were talking about reflecting on talking with the young people. But what are the lessons for the whole justice system that you've learned? What are the lessons that really come from this kind of work?
Well, I don't think you can give up on anyone. I know that there are a lot of people who say, well, people are kind of, based on the communities that we're looking at with the violence and poverty, that if you don't get to them by second grade, that, you're done. Well, if that were true, then why are we doing reentry? So my view is that even though it may be somewhat more difficult in high school, the thing is that the kids are hungering for opportunity, and we have to reach out and provide opportunities that people in other communities take for granted. I think, though, that there's got to be that empathy is at the bottom line. We need to kind of do some soul searching individually and as a society to say, are we doing what we can to help these young people so that they can achieve greatness in their lives? And certainly doing more than our society has permitted. I think that a lot of times we would like to say that, well, it's total choice, and that if people really want to, they can free themselves of the shackles of the inner city. And I would say that's really a misunderstanding of how difficult it is. That just as reentry has its challenges and obstacles, living in a very poor, a very impoverished, a violence-plagued community is very hard to leave. And so we have to learn the lessons of really empathy, listening, caring, respect. I mean, these are just such basic lessons, but we have to do that. The other thing is I've spent a lot of time learning about trauma-informed care, and while that's probably a whole other segment, I will just say this, that we have some of the greatest doctors and professionals who speak about trauma-informed care in Philadelphia. And they will say, and they do say, that when you live in a violence-plagued community, you can suffer from trauma in much the same way as a soldier returning from Afghanistan. So we have to be mindful that the toll of the violence in this community is extraordinary. And we really, if we're looking outside in, we really have to think about what that toll is. I look at crime stats all the time, and I know that almost 20,000 people have been shot in Philadelphia since 2001. That's 9/11. 20,000 people have been shot, and over 4,200 people have been murdered in Philadelphia in that period of time. These numbers are staggering, and we're the city of brotherly love. But in those communities where most of this violence is occurring, like Strawberry Mansion, how can we expect those kids to want to go to school, to really believe that there's a future? So we have to turn that around. That's what we're trying to do in Strawberry Mansion and some of these other places, working with many wonderful people and organizations who are seeking to achieve that same end.
Rob, that just sounds fantastic. That's all the time we have today, but I do want to thank you for being here with us, and I want to thank all of you who've been joining us by tuning in. You've been watching the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society's Perspective series on CCP TV, the educational channel of the Community College of Philadelphia. I'm David Travaskis, adjunct professor in the Paralegal Studies program. For more information, please contact us at the Community College, and we will see you next time on CCP TV.